Today, we are diving into a pretty wild theory from psychologist Dr. Orion Taraban. He makes the case that the rituals of modern dating, everything from the first date to those big romantic gestures, they're not new at all. In fact, his theory says they follow the exact same pattern as ancient idol worship. Okay, to get our heads around this, we have to start with a question that honestly feels like it's coming out of left field. What on earth does ancient idol worship have to do with modern dating? I know, it sounds like a total stretch, right? But the theory we're looking at today argues that this link isn't just there. It's actually fundamental to how courtship works today. All right, so first things first, to really get this theory, we need to lay down the framework. Let's start with what an ancient idol actually was and how that whole process of worship really worked. The classic example the source brings up is the golden calf from the book of Exodus. It's a physical thing, right? Put up on a pedestal, and it's meant to represent some kind of higher spiritual power. Then, the worshippers come and offer valuable things, sacrifices to this idol. Now, this process has a very specific logic to it. The worshipper offers something of value. That value is then, spiritually consumed by whatever being the idol represents. But here's the key part. The worshipper only hopes for a blessing. It's not a transaction. Any reward is seen as a gift, based purely on divine generosity. And this is where the theory takes its big leap. It argues that this ancient pattern of sacrifice and hoping for blessings isn't some relic of the past. It's the basic structure of modern courtship. So here's how the theory maps it all out. The woman is positioned as the idol, up on the pedestal. The man, he becomes the worshiper. His courtship, all the time, money, and effort he puts in, that's the sacrifice. And the blessing he's hoping for in return, well, that's sex and affection. And just to really hammer home how intense this sacrifice can feel from the man's perspective, the source puts it very bluntly, saying, modern dating has been correctly described as a kind of humiliation ritual for the man. So the theory argues that this sacrifice is sending a very specific, unspoken message. By offering up something of real value, the man is basically saying, hey, this isn't a transaction. You are a higher being, way more valuable than something I could just pay for. Okay, so let's get practical. What does this sacrifice of value actually look like in modern terms? What does this kind of worship look like on, say, a typical date? Well, according to this perspective, this is what it looks like when women are placed on that pedestal. The expectations are high, right? Expensive dinners, big gestures, gifts, and all of it comes with no guarantee of anything in return. Because a goddess doesn't do transactions. She grants blessings when she feels like it. This brings up a really key question that the theory al Tal tries to answer. Looking at it from this angle, why is something simple like a coffee date so often seen as an insult and just shot down immediately? The answer, according to this framework, is that the sacrifice has to be proportional to the value of the idol. A low-effort date is a low-value offering, and that communicates that the worshiper sees her as a, quote, second-rate goddess, someone not worthy of a big sacrifice. So this whole dynamic, the source argues, leads to a really fundamental problem. It corrupts the entire purpose of what dating is supposed to be about in the first place. The argument starts by setting a baseline for what dating should be. And it's not worship, it's not sacrifice. It's supposed to be a mutual vetting process, just two people figuring out if they're compatible for a real, long-term relationship. To explain this idea of corruption, an analogy is made to the relationship between pharmaceutical companies and doctors. Ideally, it's just about sharing information for better health, right? But when expensive gifts and fancy trips get involved, it can become about influence. In the same way, when dating stops being about mutual discovery and becomes about one person paying for the privilege of getting to know the other, the process gets corrupted. And this quote is presented as the kind of mindset that grows out of this corruption. Dating stops being about connection. Instead, it becomes about making sure you get a tangible return. A free meal, a night out, because the process of just getting to know someone isn't seen as valuable enough on its own. So what's the end game here? Where does this idol-worshiper dynamic inevitably lead, according to the theory? The theory's conclusion is actually really simple and kind of stark. Worshippers eventually abandon their idols for one big reason. The cost of the sacrifice just gets to be too high for the blessings they get in return. And the source points to some pretty extreme modern examples to back this up, like social media posts where women apparently expect a guy to send $1,000 just to schedule a date.
before a single second of time or effort has even been spent.
It all just boils down to a cost-benefit analysis. If the worshiper is pouring in huge amounts of time, energy, and money, but they aren't consistently getting that blessing of affection and intimacy, the whole system feels broken. The return on investment is just way too low. And to bring the whole metaphor crashing full circle, the source concludes with a really dramatic statement, arguing that the idol gets destroyed in the end because the value it demands is way, way greater than the value it provides. So, this theory leaves us with one central, pretty provocative question to chew on. Is modern dating a mutual process for finding a partner, or has it become more of a transaction for buying an experience? It's a challenging way to look at it, for sure, and it reframes a lot of what we think we know about modern courtship.